A man is lying on his left side in the dirt outside a mud brick house in southern Iraq. He has been there for over a year. Beside his head is a clay brick. Someone has carved a city onto it. Walls, gates, siege ramps, an army in miniature. An iron griddle stands upright between his face and the brick, like a wall. He is not allowed to look away. He eats a weighed lump of bread each day and drinks water by the cup. He cooks it over dried dung. Neighbors walk past. Some of them ask what he is doing. Most of them, we are told, treat him as entertainment. He is a priest. He has never served a single day in a temple. And the temple he was trained for is still standing. The strangest thing about this man is not the brick, or the days on his side, or the dung fire. It is that almost everything he says is going to happen on dates he writes down in advance. His name is Ezekiel. His book is the one people quietly skip. It has the wheels in it, the dry bones, the gate that never opens, Gog and Magog, a temple that was never built. It is quoted constantly and read whole almost never, which is exactly why it has a reputation for being bizarre. It is not bizarre. It is one of the most tightly engineered books in the Bible, and it is built around a single event. Something leaves the temple in chapter 10, and in chapter 43, it comes back. Every vision, every sign, every oracle in between hangs off that departure and that return. So here is Ezekiel, whole, in order. Start in the year 597 before Christ, with the siege that ended without a battle. Jerusalem's young king, Jehoiachin, had been on the throne about 3 months. Babylon's army arrived. He walked out and handed over the city. Nebuchadnezzar took the treasury and the temple's gold fittings. Then he took the people who mattered. 2 Kings gives numbers. 10,000 carried away. 7,000 fighting men, 1,000 craftsmen and metalworkers, and the entire royal household. That is not a random sweep. That is a decapitation. You remove everyone who could rebuild, rearm, or rule. Among them was a young man from a priestly family, the son of a man named Buzi. He had been raised for one job: serve in the house, handle the holy things, know the difference between clean and unclean. Priests began their service at 30. He was nowhere near 30 when the soldiers came for his neighborhood. So he was trained for a building he would never work in and shipped to a country where his profession did not exist. They settled him in the south of Babylonia at a place the book calls Tel Abib, beside the Shibar Canal. Older Bibles call it the River Shibar. It was not a river. It was a canal. Babylonian records from the city of Nippur mention it. Part of an enormous irrigation network dug across the flat southern plain. That detail matters more than it looks. Ezekiel's famous vision does not happen in a wilderness. It happens beside imperial infrastructure. He is sitting by a ditch that Babylon dug in a resettlement village among deported specialists who have been placed there deliberately. And he is counting. Every dated line in his book counts from the same fixed point. The year of the exile of King Jehoiachin, not from the king reigning in Jerusalem. From the deportation. His entire calendar begins at the worst day of his life. Ezekiel is the most precisely dated book in the prophets. More than a dozen oracles carry a year, a month, and a day. The earliest lands in 593, the last in 571. 22 years of one man's working life, time-stamped. And it opens with a line nobody has ever fully explained. In the 30th year, in the 4th month, on the 5th day. The 30th year of what? He never says. The very next verse helpfully supplies the real date, the 5th year of the exile. The oldest guess is still the best one. It is his age. He is 30. The year he should have entered the temple. That is an inference and not a fact. The text does not say it, but it fits this man exactly. On the day he became old enough to serve God inside a building, the sky opened over a Babylonian canal instead. What he sees next is the passage everyone has heard about and almost nobody has read slowly. Start with the weather. A storm wind out of the north, a vast cloud with fire flashing inside it and brightness all around. Out of the middle of the fire, something like gleaming metal, and out of that, 4 living creatures. Now read carefully. Because the real text is stranger and far more careful than the version everyone repeats. Each creature has a human likeness. Each one has 4 faces. Each one has 4 wings. A human face in front, a lion's face on the right, an ox's face on the left, an eagle's face behind. Not 4 creatures with 1 face each. 4 creatures with all 4 faces each. Whichever side you stand on, one of them is looking at you. Their legs are straight. Their feet are like a calf's hoof. They gleam like burnished bronze. That is a strange thing to specify, and it is not decoration. Straight legs do not bend. These things are not walking. Between them, something moves like burning coals and like torches, and lightning goes out of the fire. And they move like light itself, straight ahead wherever the spirit goes, and they never turn as they go. Then he looks down at the ground, and the vision turns into machinery. Beside each creature on the earth is a wheel. Their appearance is like beryl, a pale gold-green stone, and each wheel is made like a wheel inside a wheel. 2 rims at right angles so it can roll any direction without steering. That is an engineering solution. Whoever imagined this thought carefully about how the thing would actually move. And then the line that has haunted readers for 2,500 years. Their rims were tall and they were awesome. And the rims of all 4 were full of eyes all the way around. Not eyes as ornament. Eyes on the part that touches the ground. The vehicle sees everywhere it has been. Above their heads is an expanse, shining like awe-inspiring crystal. Under it, the noise of their wings is like rushing water, like an army. Above the expanse, the likeness of a throne with the appearance of lapis, a deep blue stone, and on the throne, high above it, a likeness with a human appearance. From what looked like his waist upward, gleaming metal with fire inside it. From the waist down, the appearance of fire and brightness all around, like a rainbow in a cloud on a rainy day. That is the image he chooses. Not lightning, a rainbow. And then Ezekiel puts 4 layers of insulation between himself and what he has just described. The appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. Appearance, likeness, glory, and only then the name. He is not describing God. He is describing the outermost visible edge of the effect of God, and he tells you so. That care is the whole point. This is not a wild book. It is a fanatically careful one, and what it is being careful about is the one thing that was not supposed to be possible. The throne has wheels. The place where God sits still has come to Babylon. Every deported priest by that canal believed the same thing. God lives in Jerusalem, in a room, behind a curtain. Ezekiel has just watched the room drive out to meet him. Later Jewish teachers found this passage so dangerous that they built a fence around it. The Mishnah rules that the chariot may not be expounded even to a single student, unless he is wise and understands it on his own. Creation could be taught to one person, the chariot to none, unless the student had already worked it out himself, and the Talmud remembers a closer call. The book of Ezekiel, it says, was very nearly suppressed because its words contradicted the Torah. A rabbi named Hananiah ben Hezekiah had 300 jars of oil carried up to his upper room, sat down, and worked until every contradiction was resolved. 300 jars of lamp oil. That is the measure of how long he sat there. The book survives partly because one man refused to sleep. Back at the canal, Ezekiel falls on his face. A voice tells him to stand up and gives him the name it will use forever after. Son of man, Ben Adam, mortal, human being, son of dust. It is used of him more than 90 times. God never once calls him Ezekiel, which is deliberate. The man who has just seen the throne is addressed every single time by his species. He is sent to a people the voice describes as stubborn, hard-faced, and unlikely to listen. That is the job description given up front. Then a hand holds out a scroll and unrolls it, and here is one of the small, perfect details of the book. It is written on the front and on the back. Ancient scrolls were written on one side. This one is overflowed. There is more bad news than there is room for it. And what is written on it is lamentation and mourning and woe. He is told to eat it. He does. And then he says something nobody expects. It was in my mouth as sweet as honey. The message is grief. The taste is honey. Both are true at once, and he does not try to resolve them. Then the Spirit lifts him away, and he goes in bitterness, in the heat of his spirit, with the hand of God heavy on him. He arrives among the exiles at Tel Aviv. And then comes the strangest sentence in the whole call. He sat there overwhelmed among them 7 days. A week of silence. No preaching. He simply sits down in a resettlement camp with people who have lost everything and says nothing at all. After the 7 days, the word comes, and his job is finally named. Watchman. A watchman does not decide policy. He stands on a wall and shouts when he sees something coming over the horizon. If he sees the sword and stays quiet, the blood is on his hands. If he shouts and they ignore him, he is clear. It is a brutal reduction of a prophet's work, not persuasion, notification. And then something is done to him that happens to no other prophet in Scripture. He is shut inside his house. Cords are put on him, and his tongue is made to stick to the roof of his mouth. He is mute. Except when God opens his mouth, and then he speaks, and only the words he has been handed. He loses ordinary speech, and keeps prophetic speech. He becomes an instrument that cannot be used for anything else. And that silence will hold, on and off, for years. Until the night a man walks in from the west carrying news. Remember that. It is the pin the entire book turns on. So, how do you preach when you are not allowed to talk? You do it with your body. The sign acts are the reason Ezekiel has his reputation. Read as theater, they look insane. Read as war reporting, they are exact. First, the brick. A mud brick with a city carved into it, and around it a besieging army built in miniature. Ramps, camps, battering rams. Then an iron griddle stood on edge between him and the model. An iron wall. Then he lies down beside his model, on his left side, and bears the guilt of the house of Israel. 390 days. Then 40 more on his right side for the house of Judah. The numbers have never been securely explained, and anyone who tells you they have is selling you something. Cords are laid on him so that he cannot turn from one side to the other. The performance is neither optional nor comfortable. His food is rationed by weight, 20 shekels a day, and his water by measure, a 1/6 part of a hin. Roughly a fistful of bread and about 2 cups of water. Famine rations, eaten in public for well over a year. And the bread is made from scrapings, wheat, barley, beans, lentils, millet, and emmer, all thrown into one pot together. Nobody bakes bread like that by choice. That is what is left in a city when the siege has gone on too long. Then the fuel. He is told to bake it over human dung in the sight of the people. And Ezekiel, who does everything else without a word, objects. It is the one time in the entire book that he pushes back. He says he has never defiled himself, never eaten anything that died of itself, from his youth until now. He is a priest. That is the one thing he still has. No temple, no altar. Just a lifetime of not touching the wrong thing. And the instruction is changed. Cow dung instead. It is a small mercy, and it is the only one in the chapter. Then the razor. He takes a sword and uses it as a barber's blade on his own head and beard. He weighs the hair on scales and divides it into 3. 1/3 burned, 1/3 struck with the sword, 1/3 scattered to the wind. A shaved priest, in public, destroying what he shaved. Priests did not shave. Every part of this is a violation, on purpose. Then the baggage. He digs a hole through the wall of his own house at dusk while people stand and watch. He carries his bundle out through it with his face covered so that he cannot see the land he is leaving. Years later, a king named Zedekiah will break out of Jerusalem by night, be caught, and be blinded before he is carried to Babylon. And then the last sign, and it is the one that makes people close the book. God tells him that he is about to take the delight of your eyes away from you, at a stroke, his wife. That is the phrase used for her, and it is nearly all we ever learn about their marriage. It is enough. And he is forbidden to mourn. No weeping, no tears running down, no covering the lip, no bread of mourners. He tells the people in the morning. That evening his wife dies. The next morning he does as he was commanded. When they ask him what it means, he tells them, "The temple, the delight of your eyes, is going to fall, and you will not be able to mourn it either." It is the cruelest passage in the prophets, and the book neither softens it nor explains it away. What it does do is show you the cost. This man was not delivering messages. He was being spent as one. Now the center of the book. And it begins with Ezekiel sitting in his own house with the elders of Judah in front of him. 6th year, 6th month, 5th day. The hand of God falls on him, and he is carried, in visions, to Jerusalem. He is set down at the north gate of the inner court, and shown 4 things, each one worse than the last. First, at the gate itself, an image. The text calls it the image of jealousy, standing exactly where the offerings come in. Then he is told to dig through the wall. Behind the wall, a door. Behind the door, a room. 70 elders of Israel stand in the dark, each man with his censer, and the walls are covered with carved creatures and idols. And they say a sentence that explains the whole book. The Lord does not see us. The Lord has forsaken the land. They believe the house is already empty. They are worshiping in the dark because they think nobody is home. Third, at the north gate, women sitting and weeping for Tammuz, a Mesopotamian god who dies every year with the summer. The empire's own grief has been brought home and is being performed at the door of the temple. And fourth, between the porch and the altar, in the holiest working space in the building, 25 men. Their backs are to the temple. Their faces are to the east. They are bowing to the sunrise. Every one of them is standing inside God's house with his back turned to it. That is the picture the whole vision was built to reach. Then executioners are summoned. 6 men with weapons, and one more among them, clothed in linen, with a writing case at his waist. He goes first. Through the city, marking the foreheads of everyone who sighs and groans over what is being done in it. The mark comes before the judgment, and the criterion is not innocence, it is grief. The ones spared are the ones who noticed. And then, quietly, in the middle of all this, the thing the book is actually about begins to move. The glory of the God of Israel lifts off the cherub and goes to the threshold of the house. That is one step, from the inner room to the doorway, a householder standing up. Then it goes out from the threshold and stands over the cherubim, and the wheels are there again. The same wheels from the canal. And now Ezekiel names them. The living creatures of chapter 1 were cherubim. He says he had known it all along. Though the faces have shifted, In chapter 1, it was human, lion, ox, eagle. In chapter 10, the ox has become the face of a cherub. Nobody knows why. The book records the change instead of tidying it, which is its own kind of honesty. Then the whole assembly rises and stops at the east gate of the house, still on the property, not gone yet. And finally, in chapter 11, the glory goes up out of the middle of the city and stands on the mountain east of Jerusalem, that is, the Mount of Olives, looking back down at the temple. And there the vision ends. 4 steps. Inner room, threshold, east gate, the hill outside. It leaves the way a man leaves a house he is not coming back to. And this answers the question everyone in Babylon was actually asking, underneath all the others. When the temple falls, the world will say, God lost. Ezekiel is shown that God left first and left on his own feet. But in the middle of that same vision comes one line the exiles were meant to carry for the rest of their lives. God says of the people scattered among the nations, I have been a sanctuary to them for a while in the countries where they have gone. A sanctuary. The word for the building. Applied to God himself in a foreign country with no building anywhere in sight. Almost everything Judaism becomes after the temple burns is already folded into that sentence, spoken before it burned. Which leaves the exiles with a hard question, and they had a saying ready for it. The fathers have eaten sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge, meaning we are being punished for our parents. It is a fair complaint. Most of the people sitting by that canal had personally done nothing at all. God tells them to stop using the proverb and answers it flatly. The soul who sins shall die. Not the family, not the generation, the person. It is one of the sharpest turns toward individual responsibility in the Hebrew Bible, and it cuts both ways. The wicked man who turns will live. The righteous man who turns does not coast on his record. Nobody in that camp is serving someone else's sentence, and nobody is writing someone else's good name either. And then Ezekiel gets a warning about his own audience that anyone who has ever spoken in public will recognize instantly. They come and sit down in front of him as though they were God's people. They hear his words, and they do not do them. To them, God says, you are like one who sings love songs with a beautiful voice and plays an instrument well. They enjoy him. He is good. That is the entire problem. Then at chapter 25, the book pivots outward, and for 8 chapters, Ezekiel stops talking about Israel altogether. 7 nations. Ammon first, then Moab, Edom, Philistia, Tyre, Sidon, and finally Egypt at enormous length. Most of them are neighbors who cheered. The charge against Ammon is that it clapped when the sanctuary was profaned. But Tyre gets 3 whole chapters. And Tyre is not a soldier. Tyre is a merchant. An island fortress off the coast. A trading empire. The broker of the entire Mediterranean. And Ezekiel writes it an obituary in the shape of a ship. It is the most beautiful sustained image in the book. Tyre is a ship, her planks from Sinner, her mast from Lebanon, her oars from Bashan, her deck inlaid with ivory, sails of embroidered Egyptian linen, rowers, pilots, caulkers, and soldiers on her walls hanging up their shields. Then a long manifest of everything she trades: silver, iron, tin and lead, horses, ivory, ebony, emeralds, wine, wool, spices, gold. It reads like a customs ledger, because that is what Tyre was. And then, in one line, the east wind wrecks her in the heart of the seas. Cargo, crew, and the whole world's inventory going down together, while the coastlands stand and watch. And then, chapter 28, which is the most argued over passage in the entire book. Read it slowly, because it is 2 oracles, not one, and they use 2 different titles. Verses 1 to 10 address the prince of Tyre, a man. His charge is that he said, I am a god, I sit in the seat of the gods. He is answered plainly, You are a man and not a god, though you make your heart like the heart of a god. Then verse 11 starts over with a new heading. The title changes to the King of Tyre, and the language goes somewhere else entirely. You are the signet of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. You were an anointed guardian cherub. You were on the holy mountain of God. You walked among the stones of fire. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created, till unrighteousness was found in you. Which is why this passage gets read constantly as a biography of Satan. Eden, a cherub, a perfect being who falls. So, here is what is actually true about it, stated as carefully as the text deserves. The passage never mentions Satan. It never uses the word. It is addressed, in its own opening line, to the King of Tyre. And the sin it names is not rebellion in heaven. Read the very next verse. In the abundance of your trade, you were filled with violence. The charge is commerce, trade violence, and a heart made proud by its own beauty and splendor. It is an indictment of a shipping empire. And the ending is not a fall from heaven into hell. God brings fire out of the middle of him and turns him to ashes on the ground, in the sight of all who saw him. It is a funeral with an audience, which is exactly how the lament over the ship ended too. The Satan reading is ancient, and it is respectable. Early Christian writers found the devil here, and the reading has been standard ever since. Some ancient Jewish readers went a different way entirely and found Adam in it, a perfect man in a garden undone. Scholars today still split. Many read the whole thing as poetic hyperbole about a Phoenician king dressed in the imagery of Eden. What you should not do is quote it as though the Bible plainly says so. It plainly says King of Tyre. Everything past that is interpretation. And notice what gets lost when the passage becomes about the devil. You lose a prophet telling a trading empire that its wealth was built on violence. Now the hinge of the whole book. In the 9th year, 10th month, 10th day, Ezekiel is told something very odd. Write down the name of this day, this very day. Because on this day, hundreds of miles away, the king of Babylon has laid siege to Jerusalem. There is no way for him to know that. No messenger could have crossed the distance. He writes the date down anyway. That same day he is given the image of a cooking pot set on the fire, with the city boiling inside it. And that evening, his wife dies. Then the siege runs. 18 months of it. And the book fills that gap with the oracles against the nations. That is not filler. That is dramatic silence. The prophet has nothing left to say to Jerusalem, so he talks about everyone else while it burns. Then chapter 33. 12th year of the exile, 10th month, 5th day. A fugitive from Jerusalem walks into the camp. He says one thing, the city has been struck down, and the book records a detail that is easy to miss. The hand of God had come on Ezekiel the evening before and opened his mouth. His mouth was already open by the time the man arrived in the morning, and he was no longer mute. Years of enforced silence end. The night before the worst news of his life walks through the door. And from that verse onward, the entire book changes direction. Everything before chapter 33 announces a fall. Everything after it describes a return. He never has to threaten anyone again. The threat happened. His only remaining job is to say what comes next. And he begins with the leadership, because somebody has to answer for this. Woe to the shepherds of Israel who have been feeding themselves. Should not shepherds feed the sheep? You eat the fat, you wear the wool, you slaughter the fat ones, but you do not feed the flock. The weak you have not strengthened, the sick you have not healed, the injured you have not bound up, the lost you have not gone looking for. So they scattered over the whole face of the earth, with nobody searching. That is the exile, described as bad animal husbandry. And then God does the thing the shepherds would not do. Behold, I myself will search for my sheep. He will seek them out, bring them in from the countries, feed them on the mountains, bind up the injured and strengthen the weak. No committee, no replacement dynasty first. The owner walks out into the hills himself and starts looking. Then chapter 36, and the reason given for the restoration, which is not the reason anybody would have chosen. It is not for your sake that I am about to act, but for the sake of my holy name. He says it at the start of the passage and repeats it at the end, in case anyone had got comfortable. Not for your sake. God's reputation among the nations is the stated motive. The people are being restored because the story has become an embarrassment. It is an uncomfortable answer, and the book leaves it uncomfortable. It does not flatter its audience once, anywhere. And then, in the same breath, the most tender promise in the prophets. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean. That is priest language. The cleansing of something contaminated. And I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I will put within you. I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh, and give you a heart of flesh. Not a better set of rules. An organ transplant. The diagnosis is that the problem was never a shortage of information. And I will put my spirit within you, and cause you to walk in my statutes. The obedience is supplied along with the command. And then he is set down in a valley, and this is the image everybody knows. The hand of the Lord brings him out and sets him down in the middle of a valley, and it is full of bones. He is led all the way around them, and the text gives 2 measurements. There were very many, and they were very dry. Very dry means old. Nobody died here recently. This is not a fresh battlefield. It is an ancient one, picked clean and bleached. And then the question, Son of man, can these bones live? And Ezekiel gives one of the great answers in Scripture. O Lord God, you know. Not yes. Not no. He has been a prophet long enough to stop guessing at what God is going to do. Prophesy to these bones, he is told. So he does. And there is a noise and a rattling. And the bones come together, bone to its bone, all across the valley floor. Sinews come up on them, then flesh, then skin closes over the top, and then the sentence that stops the vision dead. But there was no breath in them. A valley of complete, perfect, finished corpses. Restoration stopped. Halfway is worse than the bones were. So he prophesies a second time, now to the breath. Come from the 4 winds, and breathe on these slain, that they may live. And the word here is ruach, which means breath, and wind, and spirit, all at once. All 3 meanings are running through the passage together. The breath comes into them. They live. They stand up on their feet, an exceedingly great army. And then God explains the vision. And the explanation is the part that always gets skipped. These bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say, our bones are dried up, and our hope is lost. We are clean cut off. The vision is an answer to a sentence the exiles were actually saying out loud. It is about them, about a nation convinced it is already dead. It has been read for centuries as a promise of resurrection, and there is a case for that. But the text names its own subject first, and then he takes 2 sticks. He writes on one for Judah and on the other for Joseph, and he holds them together in his fist until they become 1 stick in his hand. The northern kingdom had been gone for well over a century. Its people were long since absorbed and scattered. He is promising to reassemble a country that nobody alive had ever seen, on the same day he promised to reassemble corpses. Then chapters 38 and 39, and the 2 names that have launched 1,000 end times charts. Set your face toward Gog, of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. With him come Persia, Cush, and Put, Gomer and Beth Togarmah from the uttermost parts of the north. Most of these are real places. Meshech, Tubal, Gomer, and Togarmah are peoples of Anatolia, known from Assyrian records. Gog himself is not securely identified with anybody. He may be a title, a distant memory of a foreign king, or a deliberately blank figure. And that blankness looks intentional. This enemy has no borders and no motive beyond plunder, and he comes from the far north. He comes against a people living in unwalled villages, quiet and secure, with no bars and no gates. That is the point of the chapter. The threat arrives after the restoration, against people who have finally stopped defending themselves. And it is over almost before it starts. Earthquake, confusion, pestilence, torrential rain, hailstones, fire, and sulfur. Israel does not fight. What Israel does is clean up. They burn the abandoned weapons for fuel for 7 years, and they spend 7 months burying the dead in a valley renamed after the event. Gog, the horde of Gog. Here is the honest caveat. The text does not name a modern country. It never has. Every generation has confidently matched Gog to its own worst enemy, and every generation so far has been wrong. What the passage does, inside the shape of the book, is simpler. It closes the last exit. Once the temple is rebuilt, somebody is going to ask whether all of this could happen again. Chapters 38 and 39 answer no. And then the final vision. It is 9 chapters long, and it is where most readers quietly give up. 25th year of the exile. 14th year after the city was struck down. The hand of the Lord comes on him again. He is set down on a very high mountain, and to the south of him there is a structure like a city, and there is a man there whose appearance is like bronze, holding a line of flax and a measuring reed. And the instruction is exact. Look with your eyes, hear with your ears. Set your heart on everything I show you. Declare all that you see to the house of Israel. He is not a tourist here. He is a surveyor's clerk. Then the bronze man begins measuring, and he does not stop for 9 chapters. The east gate, its threshold, its side rooms, its jambs, its vestibule, its steps. Then the outer court, the pavement, the chambers, the north gate, the south gate, the inner court, the altar and its stairs, the side chambers, story by story. On the page, it is the least readable passage in the prophets. It reads like a specification because that is what it is, and that is the whole point. And it is a point aimed with great precision at a priest who never got to serve. He is not being shown a symbol. He is being shown a building in dimensions, in the only professional vocabulary he ever learned. A man who lost a house is handed the plans for the next one, measured to the cubit. And then, in chapter 43, comes the sentence the entire book has been walking toward. He is brought to the gate that faces east, and the glory of the God of Israel comes from the east. From the east, the same direction it left by. Out over the mountain, and now back in. The sound of it is like the sound of many waters, and the whole earth shines with his glory. And it comes into the temple by the gate facing east, and the glory of the Lord fills the house. And a voice says, "This is the place of my throne, and the place of the soles of my feet, where I will dwell among the people of Israel forever." The soles of my feet. From a throne on wheels in chapter 1 to feet standing on a floor in chapter 43. And then the gate it came through is shut, permanently. It shall remain shut. It shall not be opened. No one may enter by it, because the God of Israel has entered by it. Only the prince may sit in it to eat bread. It is a beautiful and slightly frightening detail. That door is not a door anymore. It is a monument to an arrival. And Ezekiel is given a strange piece of homework along with the plans. Describe the temple to the house of Israel, so that they may be ashamed of their sins, and let them measure the plan. The blueprint itself is the sermon. Show them how carefully it has been made, and let the care do the work. Then, in chapter 47, water. Water is coming out from under the threshold of the temple, on the south side of the altar, running east. The man with the measuring line takes him 1,000 cubits out into it, and it is ankle deep. 1,000 more, and it is up to the knees. 1,000 more, and it is at the waist. 1,000 more, and it can no longer be crossed. A river deep enough to swim in, that nobody could pass through. It is the only river in Scripture that gets measured on the way in, purely to prove that it is growing. It runs east, down through the desert valley and into the sea, the Dead Sea, the saltiest water in the known world, and the water becomes fresh. Fishermen stand along the shore. The fish are as many as the fish of the great sea. On both banks grow trees of every kind for food. Their leaves do not wither, and their fruit does not fail. They bear fresh fruit every month, because the water flows from the sanctuary. Their fruit is food, and their leaves are for healing. And then, right in the middle of that, one honest line that almost nobody ever quotes. But its swamps and its marshes will not become fresh. They are to be left for salt. Even inside the vision, something stays salt. The book will not hand you a picture without an edge on it. Then the land is divided, and it is divided wrongly on purpose, not along the old borders. Straight horizontal strips across the map, one for each tribe, with the sanctuary and the city in the middle. The geography is flattened. No tribe gets the better valley. Nobody inherits the old advantage they used to have, and the foreigners living among them are to be given an inheritance among the tribes as native born. In a book this concerned with purity, that line is startling. And then the last verse of the book. After 9 chapters of measurements, it comes down to one short phrase. The circumference of the city shall be 18,000 cubits, and the name of the city from that day on shall be, The Lord is there. That is the ending. Not a king's name, not a temple's name, not even the old name, Jerusalem, which the final chapter never uses. The city is named after a fact. The one fact that had stopped being true back in chapter 11. So look at the shape of the whole thing now. A priest is deported before he can serve. The sky opens over an irrigation canal, and he sees a throne that moves. He is made mute and turned into a signboard. He lies in the dirt, cooks over dung, and buries his wife without weeping. He watches the glory walk out of the temple in 4 deliberate steps and stop on the hill outside to look back. He is told that the city has fallen, and his mouth opens the night before the news arrives. He sees a valley of dry bones stand up, a nation stitched together from 2 sticks, and a house measured to the inch. And the last thing he sees is the glory coming back in through the same gate it left by, and the door sealed behind it. That is the book, not a heap of oddities. One argument, in 2 halves, about whether God had abandoned his people. And the answer, given to a man sitting beside a Babylonian ditch 900 miles from home, was this: I moved. I am not gone. He was never a comfortable prophet, and he was not trying to be. He was a priest without an altar who spent 22 years insisting that the address had changed and that the tenant had not.